Um, what we want to do is I'm going to review portfolio requirements. And then we are going to get into just watching me wireframe a quick portfolio site together. We're going to talk a little bit about the differences between a wireframe mockup and prototype, and then we'll finish up on just a quick note on templates. So, not a ton of homework tonight. There is one homework assignment, which is your creating your portfolio site mockup. But we'll get to that towards the, wireframe, but we'll get to that towards the end of the class. So, super, super important to have a portfolio website at the end of any boot camp, right? Because you need to stand out for an employer. You don't want to just be another boot camp grad who, says they have done these projects and that's it. You really want to be able to stand out. And the best way to do that is if you're going to be trying to get hired as a website developer or full stack developer, why wouldn't you have your own website? And so further in the curriculum, we're going to talk about deploying this website and getting it live on the internet and all of that stuff. But your weekend homework project is going to be taking these requirements, which are linked to in the week 1, day 3 outline and also in the homework assignment. And what you need to do is come up with a wireframe that includes all of this information. Right? And so you want to start thinking about, hey, are these separate pages or is this one long page that you can scroll through? And oftentimes the best source of inspiration is actually going to be other people's websites, right? So what you want to do is go find other people's portfolio. Just go on Google and type in portfolio websites and see what comes up, right? Look at 5, 10 of them, figure out which ones you like the most. You're welcome to mash up multiple ones together. But after we get through these requirements, I'm going to pull up a website that I like. We're going to go through that and kind of go side by side and talk about how we can take an actual functional website and make a wireframe out of it in a way that will make it very easy for us to start developing the code for that starting next week. So basic portfolio site needs to have your name on it. It needs to either have a link to your email address or some kind of contact form. It needs to have, needs to have an about page, which is just a little paragraph rundown on you, on your history, where you're at in your career, what you're looking for. And oftentimes you'll hear this term of, well, we need the copy for that. That whenever you hear we need copy for that, that just means that we need the paragraph that's going into that section, right? And the reason I bring that up is oftentimes when you're doing freelance software development, you're going to be on pause because you'll get the whole site designed and then say like, hey, I need the copy to put in here. And the client will be like, I'm not a writer. I don't know what to put in there, right? So don't underestimate the time that it takes to actually write outside of the technical code itself. You can do a testimonial section if you would like. It's totally optional. You must have your resume. That takes a lot of time to develop, and Laura will definitely help you with your resume. But the most important thing on there is make sure you have a link to download it as a PDF. Because when recruiters are going through resumes, they don't want to have to open up Microsoft Word and get some warning that you used a font that isn't installed. And then, it turns out you did it in Pages and they're on a Windows computer and they can't open it. Always, when you are sending your resume, make sure you have it as a PDF. And then for the most important section of all of this, you need to have a portfolio section on your homepage. And it needs to have the name of the project, what you build it in, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or Express and SQL and Node and React, or whatever it is, right? Just give the people context why they should look at this project. A one-line description, right? This is a Blackjack app that operates in the terminal and plays one round of Blackjack. But you also want to have objectives. I built this because it was the first time I worked with variables and I needed to understand how user input made it into a variable. Something as simple as that. Future improvements. Every project always has more work you can do on it. So a future improvement, good example of that would just be, I would like to make it so after you play a round, you can hit the continue button and it would let you play another round instead of exiting out of the program. Right? Just give the whoever's looking at your website an idea that you've got a little foresight, right? You're a little bit of a dreamer. You've got more work that you want to do. You want a screenshot of the project because some people aren't going to have time to see what you've actually made, but they need some kind of visual, and that's going to be a lot of text. So you need a little screenshot to kind of offset that. You need a link to it on your GitHub because some people won't actually give a crap about the project. They just want to see the code that you wrote for it. And we will be covering Git and GitHub in the DevOps week, which is week 6. And then finally, you need a link to that code running somewhere because someone who is looking at all these different applicants doesn't have time to download your code, get it set up on their computer, get a dev environment running, and then be able to test it, right? So no matter what project you're working on, whether it's a simple terminal app all the way up to a full stack application like your capstone in the classroom project will be, you need to just have a link to it running. Some students have used Code Sandbox, but just to give you an idea there. I don't expect you to have all of this done. I just expect you to have most of this thought through in your wireframe. And we're going to work through that for the rest of class tonight so you can see an idea of like, hey, this is the wireframe that I need to have done, and this is due on Sunday, right? So this is going to be kind of your big weekend project to get your wireframes done for your portfolio sites. A link to your blog is helpful, and then social media links, right? You should at least have LinkedIn. Again, another thing Laura is going to help you with. If you want to link to Twitter and GitHub, that's great. If you want to link to, your Facebook or any other social media platforms you're on, that's completely fine. But just keep in mind that the people going to this website are going to be people who want to hire you. So whatever you're linking to here, just keep it professional. Take a moment. Any questions on any of that?
I have a question.
Shoot.
So just wasn't sure like what you meant by wireframe, so I just want to double check. Are we doing this in the same way as how we did it for the card? Or
yes, with an asterisk. So I would say diagrams.net is great to get some experience in. Once you stop fighting the tool stops fighting you, which is a very anyway. Getting familiar in a tool like diagrams.net is going to be immensely helpful for you throughout your entire software career. However, I will say that my favorite place to create wireframes is not in diagrams.net. It's on a whiteboard. And first time I did wireframing, I had a Cheez-It box. And I took the Cheez-It box and put it up on the wall of the whiteboard, outlined the box, and said, there's our first screen. And I designed everything on the whiteboard there, and I got my login screen all functional. And then I went, all right, now what's the home screen, right? What's it look like when they sign in? So I grabbed my Cheez-It box out, I slapped it up on the wall, I drew another rectangle out, I labeled that as homepage, and I started putting in my nav bar and all of that stuff. So if you find that you hate diagrams.net and you really want to do this on paper or on a whiteboard, that is completely fine. Just take a picture of whatever you have created over the weekend and upload that as your submission. If you would prefer to check out any of the tools on this list for either mockup tools or prototypes, probably a little overkill, or if you would like to find another wireframing tool other than diagrams.net, you are welcome to do that. If you are a wizard in PowerPoint or Keynote or Google Slides, and you find that easier to use in diagrams.net, make your wireframes in Google Slides, right? Whatever tool is most comfortable for you is what you should use for this assignment.
Thank you.
Other questions? And we are going to spend the rest of tonight putting together a wireframe so that you'll have an example of what the turn-end solution should look like. Any other questions on that? Okay. I'm actually going to move this to the bottom of the list because I want to just knock these two out. So wireframe mockup prototype. I'm going to pull up this article. So this is a really great visual of what a wireframe looks like, what a mockup looks like, and what a prototype looks like. So a wireframe doesn't have any colors in it. Chances are it doesn't normally have images in it. All it has in it is, hey, this is where things are going to go. This is the general layout. Here's the information that needs to go on the screen. You guys have gotten really good at taking a requirements document and start wireframing it. And that wireframing process falls apart if you don't have the requirements planning done completely. So this is totally a process that builds on itself, right? So you really want to prioritize, hey, do I have all the information I need from the client? And then have I converted that information into a structure that makes sense that I can work off of for all these individual screens? From there, you go into the mockup process, which is saying, okay, based off of all these wireframes, I need to identify individual components that I'm going to be reusing. I have buttons here. I need to make sure buttons work. I have little social media icons up here at the top. I need to go pull those in, right? I've got a profile image. I need to go get a profile image. Okay, now I need to start thinking through, I put details in my wireframe, but what does details mean? Details is location, is title, you know, thinking through all of that. Okay, I put a search button up here, but is my search button going to show up as an icon? Is it going to look like one of these red buttons down at the bottom? You know, what does that look like? So when we say mockup, you often hear the term pixel perfect mockup. And what that means is whatever is in the mockup is exactly how it should look when the app actually runs on the phone or on the browser or whatever it is. So your mockup is a step towards higher fidelity. And when we say higher fidelity, all we mean is more details, more thought through, kind of closer to that finished product. And then the final step is prototyping. And prototyping is somewhat newer. I don't want to say it's new, but in the past decade or so, it's come around of, hey, wouldn't it be great? My mockup is so well thought out. Before we hand the mockup over to the developers, can we make this interactive? Can we make it so that when you click on the little likes button, you know, it actually adds one to the count? Can we make it so that when you click on the search icon, a little search icon drops down, right? This app isn't fully functional. It isn't built. It's not going to be responsive on different screen sizes. It's not going to be saving any of the information you input to it. But can we take this prototype to an investor and say, this is what we're trying to build, play around with this prototype and see what you think? And that prototype would let you click through to different screens. I have seen people build prototypes in PowerPoint or Keynote or slides, just with linking to other slides. So really impressive. You can do it. The de facto industry standard for prototyping is a company called Envision, and I did link to them in the outline. We won't be going too far down into prototypes, but I'm hoping that we'll have enough time that we can spend a little bit time on mockups and understanding like component libraries and things like that. So anyway, prototype's a great thing if you can get to it, but a lot of developers will skip steps in this process, right? You can't really have a prototype without a mockup, but there are some developers who will just do their wireframes and say, I know enough from this wireframe that I'm going to jump right in and start coding from there. I also know developers who go, I don't need to wireframe because I've got the layout in my head. I'm going to jump right into designs. I'm going to go right into mockups and I'm going to start playing around with design elements and colors and palettes and all of that. And as I'm developing all of that, I'm also getting the content into my mockup. So it is totally fine to skip these steps, but just something to consider. Any questions there? we will be spending more time not only getting a wireframe built, but also talking about like what a mockup would look like and how it's different from a wireframe. And I did link to that whole article, and they've got like a really helpful chart down at the bottom here to compare them and talk about like what kinds of job titles would be working on that. So if you would like to read more about wireframes, mockups, and prototypes, feel free to check that link out. Any questions there?
No.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Okay. Oh, is there a question?
No, I think you're good to go.
Okay. Quick note, when we start getting into coding and when you start looking around at other people's portfolio sites, you may find something like this, which is they're basically giving you a template. And you can actually find free templates or pay for a template and get a beautiful website that looks just like this. And you can click in on it and start editing it. And, you know, you think, wow, this is a great starting point, right? And when you buy this, you are literally getting all the HTML, all the CSS, all the JavaScript, and all you need to do is say, hey, let me go find where it says Brandon Johnson, and I'm going to go replace that with my name. And as long as they are either selling the template or giving it away for free, that is a perfectly fine thing to do, but something you shouldn't do while you're in the boot camp. And the reasoning behind that is, while it can be a great starting point, learning how to start a project from scratch is very, very important. And you don't want to get to the end of this process and have someone say, wow, this is great, let me look at your code, and realize that 80% of the code is someone else's code that they wrote. And even though you're permitted to use it, they're like, well, we're looking to hire someone who can do these projects from scratch. You're telling me you can't do it from scratch? You have to go find a starting point and put your data in there? So I would caution you against using templates. There is a time and place for templates. But going through the boot camp, we are going to learn how to do this from scratch. So while it's perfectly fine to take inspiration from other people's websites and say, I want it to look like that, I would not encourage you to take their code and modify it to have your information in it. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Awesome. Okay, so I am going to actually pull up this website because I thought it's a nice, clean portfolio website. This is what I am going to model my site after. So for your homework assignment for the weekend, you're going to go do a Google search for portfolio websites or resume websites, and you're going to find 10, 15, 20 of them. And you're going to figure out which ones you like the most, and whatever one you pick, that is what you are going to wireframe off of. So we are going to go through and do a quick wireframe of this just so you make sure you understand your weekend assignment. You don't have to write any code. You don't have to go any further than just a wireframe. But important to understand kind of that step in the process, right? Of making sure that we've got a wireframe in place before we go too far. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over back to diagramsnet. And I'm going to create a new file here and do a blank diagram. And I'm going to have this website, well, let's just keep it in another tab and maybe close out some of these. Okay, so first things first, I need to start with a rectangle, right? We almost always start with a rectangle on any kind of mockup. So we're going to start there. And when I'm in here, I'm noticing, hey, there's some layout going on here. So the first place I always start with a wireframe is layout. And we're going to be heavily utilizing a system called the grid. And so I'm going to actually go to a website called 960.gs and hit the big old download button. And what that's going to do is download a file that looks like this. So in here, they've got templates for just about every different kind of program that you can imagine. And they're all specific file extensions, but I'm going to go to the one that's for, not for Flash, for Fireworks maybe. And Fireworks has this 12, 16, and 24 grid column. So I'm going to use the 12 column system because that's the most widely used one. And all I need to do is drag and drop that into draw.io. And that is going to look like this. So I'm going to take my columns and I'm just going to shrink them down enough that the whole width of them fits in to my rectangle. And then I'm going to actually right click and send these to the back and make my rectangle have no fill so I can kind of see through it. Okay. And just size that down a tad bit more. And now I've got my columns roughly in place. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back here. Now, when we say there's a 12 column system, that means that everything that we're placing on this website has to fall into those columns. So if I wanted something 1/12 of the screen width, I am going to make it 1 column. If I would like something to be half the screen width, I'm going to make it 6 columns, right? And the reason I'm going to make it 6 is because 6 divided by 12 is 50%. But if we look here, if I take this and I say, hey, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you'll notice that takes up half of my screen. And so the reason why we do 12 instead of 10 is that 12 is more easily dividable by more numbers, right? So if I want 3 even sections, and I do 10 divided by 3, I'm going to get 3.33333, and we can't make something 3 and 1/3 column, right? Because everything has to be divisible by that. But if we go into a 12 column system and say, oh, I would like 3 independent columns, now we're going to have a 4 column, a 4 column, and a 4 column, and that's going to all add up to 12, right? So if we wanted 3 columns side by side, we would have a column spanning 4 columns, another one spanning another 4, and then the last one spanning the last 4. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that will make even more sense once we get into coding, but bringing the grid into the designing process will mean that our design will be easily translatable into code. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to look, and I'm going to say, that to me looks like a 2 column, right? This looks like 20% of the screen, and this looks like 80% of the screen. So I'm going to make that a 2 column, and make that come full width. And then in here, I'm going to just pull out, let's make it a circle, and we'll say profile image, and we're just gonna drag out my name, and we're gonna look, and he's got about, experience, education, skills, interest, and awards. But I think it's gonna be better to go off of our portfolio website requirements list, and based off of that list, we need about, resume, projects. Actually, let's call it portfolio. I think that's more professional. Blog, and we'll do our social media link somewhere else. So I'm just going to drag that out a little bit. Maybe do a little line spacing. All right. Starting our wireframe, right? Starting to feel good. And now I want to recreate this section. So I'm going to say, oh, actually, he doesn't have his name here, so I'm going to take that out. Okay. So I'm going to throw my name in. If I could spell my own name, that would be helpful. And I'm going to just make that a little bit bigger. And put that up there. Okay. Next up, he's got his address. I don't think we need address, but email address is probably good. So I'm just going to copy and paste that. We're going to bring that down here. I'm going to say max@zane.tech. I'm going to size that down to 24. Let's go down to 16. And I'm just going to position that left aligned and get that in over here and make sure this is left aligned and get that in so everything's lining up. Okay, that's looking good. Now he's got his little bio paragraph going on, right? So we're just going to say, make that even smaller and say some text goes here about how Max is the greatest instructor in all of history. Because if you can't brag about yourself, why are you doing a portfolio site? Totally kidding. Totally kidding. Okay, so we're going to throw that in. And now we get to our icons, right? And you noticed our name isn't lining up here, right? It's not really in a column. I've got something in the white space going on there. So let's see. He's got a little sliver here that could be almost an entire column's width, right? And he's also got some space over here on the side. So what we're going to actually do is make sure our box is lining up with this column and stopping over here in that column. And then we're going to make sure our name lines up with that column and that. And now all of a sudden that's starting to feel like a real layout, right? We're starting to look at spacing there. We're starting to realize, oh, this is starting to work. Okay, next up, he's got his LinkedIn, GitHub, Twitter, and Facebook. So we're going to come in here and grab our circle. And I'm just going to go grab a Facebook icon. And let's take this one. And if I right-click and copy image, I should be able to just paste, allow. That certainly did not work. Okay, I'm going to go back to Facebook. I'm going to drag it to my desktop. I'm going to go back to draw.io and I'm going to drop it in. I'm going to size that down. And now we've got Facebook. And notice I really took time to make sure that that's lining up in that column. Because when we start coding this out, we really want to make sure that we've thought through our spacing going on there. Okay, next up, I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab a Twitter icon. It's kind of low resolution. That one will work. I'm going to drop that in. I'm going to size that down. Position that roughly in place. All right, now we're making good progress. One more icon I'm going to grab just for the point. Let's grab the GitHub icon. A little pro tip for you, if you need a transparent background, like we do in this case, if you hit the little more, hit tools, you can go to color and set it to transparent. And Google will make sure that it only gives you PNGs so that you have a transparent background going on there. So I'm going to drag that to my desktop, go back here, drop it in, resize is fine, and get that in place. Okay, so we could go on and on here, right? But you guys will probably mutiny against me if we wireframed out the whole site. However, for your homework, I do want you to get wireframes done for every page that should be showing up on your site. What I would like to do is take the rest of the time to show you how we can convert a wireframe into a mockup using diagramsnet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back into my rectangle and I'm going to say, hey, go into the style and fill it in. So our grid is still hanging out back there for additional things that we may need to design. But when you turn your fill on, it's going to feel a little bit more like a website, right? So we're going to come in here, and he's got this orange theme going on. So I'm going to come in here into this rectangle. I'm going to drop a fill in, and I'm going to say, hey, I would like that to be orange. Now for my profile image, I'm just going to go to my Facebook. Oh, I'm not signed into Facebook. I'm going to go to my personal website and grab my little image. And drop that in.
How'd you get that cartoon picture?
I went on Fiverr and I paid someone, I think, $25, and they made it for me.
That's cool.
Those two.
You say you do?
My daughter does.
Oh.
Okay, and now let me see. What are our font options? Do I have access to... Oh, awesome. So I'm going to go in to the site that I'm modeling off of, and I really like his font, whatever he's using here. So I'm going to go to the Inspect tool, which we will be diving into these a little bit more. And if I just do a search for font family, it's going to tell me it's this font called MULI. So let's see if that's on Google Fonts. Don't worry, this is all recorded. So if I'm going too fast, you can always go back into the recording. So this looks like a close enough match. So I'm going to go back into diagrams and say I have a custom font, and the font name is MULISH. And that automatically changed it for me. And then all I'm going to do is... it's going to let me uppercase it? No. Resume. I shouldn't have cleared that. Okay. Already starting to feel more like a mock-up. I'm going to grab these and also set them into Molish. All right, now it's starting to feel real. And let's come back in here. I'm going to close this out. He's got a little font color going on there. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to do something like that. Make it a little bigger. Get my font color and set it into that same orange color. I'm going to come back over to my rectangle and I want to remove the line around it. And feels like a pretty good mock-up to me. So, just to give you an idea of the tools, right, of what you can do there. And now, when your developer comes in, they can remove the fill and say, oh, this is going to line up exactly with my icons. Okay, any questions on that? Does everyone, most importantly, understand the homework assignment? Is your job is to create either a mock-up or at the very least a wireframe for your entire portfolio website. And if you would like to all use this one in particular, this has different sections for education and experience, skills, all of that stuff. But I would very much encourage you to go out, spend 10 minutes just looking at different people's portfolio websites and pick whichever one you like the most, and that's what we're going to model your individual site off of.
That's when you put the grid inside of the box, when you resize the column grid.
Yep.
Put it by the corner dot, that just automatically does it proportionally, or you have to hold down shift or anything?
Nope, if you get it by the corner dot, it will always scale proportionally.
Thank you.
Good question.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Is there any way that like we can make it into like an animation type of what should I say, this wireframe?
So when you get into animation, that's when you cross the line from mockup into prototype. And so like a prototyping tool like InVision will actually let you like scroll up and down and have like the nav bar anchored over on the side and then have more stuff going on. So I will say that diagramsnet should let you export in a way that that InVision itself will be able to suck it up, and you could use that tool. I'm definitely not assigning that for homework, but if you would like to play around with InVision, this is the perfect first week module to go ahead and do that. Other questions?
In the chat box.
Yep. Absolutely. You can use Miro. You can use Canva if you prefer Canva. Whatever tool you guys would like to use, that is completely fine with me. Although I will say, and I'm going to update this in the assignment, you must use the grid system in your designs.
When I was just doing a quick trying to follow along, and when I went to pull the grid over, it was just like letters and numbers. I'm not sure if can you redo that part, please?
Sure can. So what you want to do is when you download the zip file, it's gonna have, and you open the zip file, it's gonna have all of this stuff in it. Normally you would just go to templates and pick whatever program you're working in. But because we're not working in any of these programs directly, it's harder. So what I did is I went into, I think it was Fireworks, and the Fireworks happens to have the .png file extension. So as long as it's got that PNG and you grab the 12 column one, when you drag it in, it may come in a different size, but at least it will just drag and drop into diagrams.net. Okay.
I tried. That's what I tried, but it was just like a bunch of.
Do you want to share your screen and give it a try?
Sure.
Fireworks.png.
So
yes.
Zip. And it was under templates.
Oh, and not Flash. You want Fireworks.
What did I go to?
Flash.
I can't even read right now. I'm sorry. So, and that doesn't have the .png, so that should have been my sign. Okay, so then you said the 12, and then I should have been able to just drag it. Thanks.
No problem.
I have a quick question. What was the folder that was in that fireworks?
It's going to be in templates, Fireworks,
I see it.
and then the 12 file. And I'll add that to the assignment just so you have it in there.
Max, when we align it up, we're lining up that white space as well. So whatever the rectangle that's encasing the column.
Correct.
Max, what was the name of the website that we're downloading it from?
960.gs, and I'll also add that to the assignment.
I think it was already on the assignments page too.
It's in the day 3 outline, yes.
And for looking at portfolio sites, you just recommend Googling portfolios?
Portfolio site, resume website, personal website, any of those good keywords. And the other thing you can do is look at other members of the community, maybe that you've met at OpenHack, maybe that you've seen are incoming instructors. Some people are going to have absolutely terrible websites because they've been employed for so long that they haven't gotten around to updating them in a while. You will also have people who were jobless 3.5 years ago and spent an entire month on their website. Me. Excuse me there. So I will drop my link in the chat in case you would like to look at my website. I'm not suggesting that you model it after mine. You can if you would like, but there are lots and lots of websites out there. And it doesn't really have to be a portfolio website, right? If you find a website where you're like, this is a blog about photography, but I think I could make this really work for my portfolio site, feel free to go use that. Okay, any other questions people may have for this evening, for the homework assignment, for anything fun?
No.
For the car exercise, you say we don't need to submit that?
Correct. I'm going to do a little bit of content on the car exercise tomorrow. There is a chance that class will actually be pushed back until 6:30 and will be replaced with a pre-recorded video. However, I'm not guaranteeing that because I don't know how long it's going to take me to make the video tomorrow. So there's a small chance of that happening, but still plan for being here at 5:30 tomorrow. And then we will go from there. But yes, Doug, to your point, no need to do any additional work on those wireframings. You know, the point of that was they say the best way to learn content is to see one, do one, and teach one. And so the idea of a lot of my class outlines are, let me show you how to do one, right? Let me show you, hey, I'm going to go do this portfolio page, or hey, we're going to get the basic controls working and that layout done. And then we put it in your hands and we say, all right, now you guys do one. And then we take it back and we say, all right, present it. Talk about your experience, make sure you're comfortable conveying technical concepts to sometimes non-technical people. We're trying to get you set up for success here, right? It's careers in code, not developers in code, right? We're trying to make sure that you're set up for success once that career kicks off. So that's why we try and follow that model. Any other questions for tonight? If questions come up on assignments or this weekend, I'm always accessible in Slack, so just feel free to hit me up. Chances are, if you have the question, someone else has the question. So yeah, feel free to hit me up.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great night, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, you too.